Hello, my name is Abbie O'Farrell. I'm a junior here at UNCW, and I'm a marketing major. And my question as a Christian student is, why is it that professors are so quick to speak when they are atheists and non-believers? And why is it so hard for our Christian professors to come forth and confess their faith and speak on it?